This is a Global Tel-Link prepaid call from
Tariq Maqbool,
an inmate at the New Jersey State Prison.
Hello, and welcome back to 1 Minute Remaining. My name's Jack Lawrence, the host and creator of this show. Today is part 11 of the story of Tariq Maqbool, a man who's been incarcerated in the state of New Jersey since 2002 for a double homicide of two men, a crime he says he's innocent of.
You're like my therapist now.
Glad to be of
talking
service.
To you, like sitting on a couch talking to you, because I have kept this in. I tell this story to people, and if you could think, people think I have a third horn coming out. Forget the first and the second I already have, you know?
Yeah.
Like, no, this can't be. Yes, it is. This is how it is. This is how Jersey does. I mean, this is the standard operating procedure here, and my case was just weird. I just feel like down the line, hopefully some judge will look at it and then say that this kid's life was, well, I'm not a kid anymore, but it is worth more that you can, delve into the complications, because usually people say, oh, it's just too complicated and move on. At the end of the day, I know it sounds selfish. I just sit there with my little hat, like I'm still here. So in one of my writings, I equate people who are locked up as that fish, that goldfish, in the aquarium you have, like, you get that goldfish in your house and, oh, the goldfish is there. Everybody's like, ooh, wow, and all that stuff. After a while, the kids, who actually love that fish, they just lose interest because kids are kids. And then they forget to take care of it. You got to feed it every day. You got to make sure the bubbles are running. And every now and then you look at that goldfish and you got those big bulging eyes, and then mouth is constantly moving, like next to that glass. It's like screaming, but it has no voice. Like, I'm still here.
Yeah.
But nobody notices it. So I feel like that goldfish sometimes. But thank you for providing me in a forum. At least I can talk about it.
When it comes to true crime stories, especially those that follow murder cases, there is always inevitably criticism of them. Making a Murderer, Serial, the story of Adnan Syed, The Staircase, shows such as 1 Minute Remaining that follow the story from the perspective of the accused, shows that many people say didn't give you all the information. They say that these shows highlighted the information that made the person look innocent and left out the stuff that showed their potential guilt. It's fair to say, over the past 10 episodes, I brought you information from this story that I suggest highlights a lot of issues with Tariq's guilty verdict. But I haven't brought you everything. Now I know what you're thinking. Uh-oh, what hasn't he told us? Did Tariq's phone place him at the crime scene? Was there a witness who saw him run from the scene of the crime? Was there someone else who says Tariq was involved in this crime? Well, actually, yes and no. Let me explain. We already know this case is crazy. We know that it is full of names, people with multiple names, people with the same names, a real cast of characters. So what I've done is try to minimize the confusion, although some might say it's still very confusing, and I wouldn't disagree. I've done as best I can, and in doing so, we haven't covered every minute detail of this case. And if anything, I've in fact left out things that help Tariq's case. So in the interest of bringing you everything that I can, what we're going to do is just quickly highlight a few extra key factors in this case, starting with cell phone towers. You, I'm sure, as a crime show aficionado, know that police use cell tower signals to place people either at or away from a crime scene. In 2002, this technology was not as well known about as it is today. But of course, Tariq was in the phone business, he knew all about it. And in fact, on the night of this crime, a phone call was made. Now, there's some conjecture as to who initiated this phone call and the discussion that was had in this phone call, but it was between Tariq and Manish. Manish was the boss of Andy and Jay. Manish says that Tariq called him on the night and said that he was partying with Andy and Jay. Now, Tariq says that's not the case. But regardless of what conversation was had, Tariq says that phone call was made, and he wanted the cell phone data.
I wanted them to get my tower records, and because I did make the phone call, and he himself has alleged that I made the phone call. Not only that, he also provided my number, and he said, "Yeah, I thought I called me." Now, you can take away what he alleged I said. That's not the point. Now, I told my lawyer, I said, "Can you please get that phone call?" Because that time, from that time on till whatever they did all the way down to Jersey City, I can't be in two places at one time. If you get the tower records, it will triangulate. It will tell them exactly my location with like a few miles. And I can't be 30, 40 miles away, all the way by New York City, killing people, burning cars, do all sorts of stuff. But she did not take me seriously. I worked in the industry for a long time. The technology was there, but people did not know about it like we know it now. Now it's like a second thing. It's like people dust for friends or, whatever. This is something detectives do as a matter of fact now. It's a thing they do. At that time, Jack, it was a very, very novel thing for her. So she basically just didn't believe me. I told my other attorney, Mr. Beam, and he was sort of like semi down with it, but he didn't move because she was the first chair. They call it. She was the head lead attorney. But she did not move for it.
The story of Tariq Maqbool is one with more names and characters than an episode of Game of Thrones. Andy or Amit, Jay or Jawad, Zaid, Z, Manish, Mike, Joong, Mooney, Eddie, Kenny, Sam. It's enough to make you dizzy. However, there is one other name that I left out. Again, to try and avoid confusion. However, it is the name of someone who would take the stand against Tariq. Yet another person who was supposedly involved in this deal. And his name is Nick. Nick was friends with the victim Joong for a number of years and in fact would introduce Joong to Andy. Nick would say that he in fact had a meeting with Tariq and the rest of the motley crew about this deal, and that Tariq was leading the discussions about money.
Rajesh Gold, the guy Nick, the Indian dude, who said that he was told it was Tariq. He testified, and he said he met me the night before, 2 nights before, and they brought $70,000, and I was the one who gave him that back. I said, no, the deal was for $1 million. I never met him. I believe that they literally told him, and he said that they told him. He met with somebody named Tariq. I was not at that meeting, and that's where my witnesses would have came in, Sarah and everybody else, that I did not leave the store that day. There's no way I was there that day. But he said he met somebody named Tariq, and in the court, the prosecutor asked him, this is the guy? He's like, yeah.
In court, during his testimony, which I'll add was done with the help of an interpreter, if things weren't hard enough to understand as it was, during his testimony, he would point Tariq out and identify him as the man he met. He says that he's 75% sure he saw Tariq with Andy, Jay and Zaid at a White Castle, which is a burger chain restaurant in the United States. And then again, he would meet him face to face during this meeting where Tariq was discussing money. However, what's interesting is that come time for cross-examination, Tariq's attorney begins to ask Nick to describe the person he says he met as Tariq Maqbool.
So my lawyer gets up at her turn with a cross-examination. She covers me. She's like, what does he look like? And he just, I don't know. And he's Indian, so it's not like, it's a different race. It's pretty close. He couldn't tell my eye color, couldn't tell him about my height, couldn't tell him about my hair color. Mind you, he was testifying the whole time looking at me, and he just couldn't.
Tell me, what did the person look like that had sunglasses on? What color was his skin? It was like we are. What does that mean, sir? Was he black? Was he white? Was he brown? Was he green? What does that mean? I don't know how you call it. He was not white, he wasn't black, but in between. What colour was his hair? I don't remember. Did he have a moustache or a facial hair? I don't remember. How tall was he? I don't know. I was only there a few moments, a couple of seconds. I was not concentrating at how he looked or what kind of hair he had. In 2 or 3 seconds, how can I look? So that's why you're not sure who that person was, correct? That was the reason I said 75% sure. The person that you met at the store or the office with Andy and Zaid, what colour was his skin? It was nighttime, I couldn't see. Well, you're talking to this person, aren't you? Yes. Well, how close were you standing to this person? Right in front of each other. It was a small place. There were 3 or 4 of us standing in that room. Okay, what was the individual wearing? What clothing did he have on? I don't remember. What colour was his hair? I don't remember. Did he wear eyeglasses? No. Did he have a beard? I don't remember. Did he have a mustache? I don't remember. How much did he weigh? I don't know. How tall was he? 5'8", 5'7", something like that? Well, are you guessing, sir? Well, I have to guess because I was not there with a measuring tape. So you don't know? Is that your response? Well, how could I know?
And I had told my lawyer that time when I was coming in the court, he was standing outside, and detective, and I'll say his name, the scumbag, his name is O'Malley, young boy. He literally pointed at me while I'm coming in with the escort officer. This is the guy, Tariq. This is Maqbool. He literally pointed towards me, right in front of me, like we're literally standing 2 feet away. And he's like, oh, okay. And that's what he said. And that's if I found it very odd. I was like, who the hell is this Indian dude?
When you were told you were coming to testify in court today, were you told the name of the case that you were going to be testifying in? Yes. What was the name of the case you were told you were coming to testify in? In front of Tariq Maqbool. In front of Tariq. And Tariq is the name that you told us was the person that was in that store on October 29th, correct? Yes. The person you can't identify from memory, correct? When we went inside, we shook hands and introduced ourselves, and Andy said, Tariq, and I came to know it was Tariq. So Andy was the person who told you this man's name is Tariq, is that correct? Well, both of them said it. Zaid said it as well. So Andy and Zaid called him Tariq. Yes. Were you ever asked by the police to look at photographs to identify the person you met in the office that day? No. Were you ever asked by the police to identify the person that you met at White Castle? No.
So when I came in and he's coming in and he testified, and I just told my lawyer, I was like, this is what just happened. She forgot to object. She objected on that point after I was found guilty, and the judge said, what can I do now? There's nothing is done. It's on the record.
Once Tariq's attorney had finished her cross-examination and sat down, prosecution would get back up, point at Tariq Maqbool, and ask Nick if that was the man he'd met. He says, yes.
And that's how he testified against me.
Now, when it comes to witnesses in this case, it would appear there was 2 ladies that were actually present at the location of where the bodies of Joong and Mun Ahn were discovered in a burnt-out car. They were there the night the car was set on fire.
One was Angela Williams. She testified pro the prosecution in Paul Reed's trial. So she was a security guard posted outside the Laidlaw bus station or whatever you want to call it. And she was in a quarrel with her cousin. When the bodies were left there, she heard a boom. They both provided a statement to the police. Angela Williams' statement said that the guy she saw was quite tall, or 6 foot tall. I'm not 6 foot tall, I'm about 5'8" in good day. She said the guy was about 6 foot tall, lanky, and, that's how she came. So they brought her to testify for their prosecution in Paul Reed's trial.
Now, as a reminder, Paul Reed, Steve Reed, they worked in the store with Zaid and are the African-American guys that are referred to in this story and during the crime. Paul and Steve Reed were also placed on trial for this case, and both were found guilty.
As a prosecutor witness, she said the same thing on the stand. And so Paul Reed is black, so his attorney asked him to stand up, and she's like, did you see this guy? She's like, no, he's black. No, that was not the guy. In my trial, he refused to call her. So my attorney use her as a hostile witness because she didn't want to testify for the defense. And so she called her, and she was not cooperating. So then she asked the judge, can I treat her as a hostile witness? The judge said, yes, you may. So basically then she forces her to talk. And she said, you said this in the previous trial, you said this in this previous statement. She's like, yes. And she's like, he was 6 foot tall.
So this lady who is called to the stand is what is known as a hostile witness. She tells the court she sees a man of at least 6 feet tall and skinny leaving the area in which the loud explosion came from, the area where the car was found containing the bodies of Joong and Mun Ahn. This is what the prosecuting attorney said in his closing arguments in Paul Reed's trial as it pertains to this witness. Angela Williams is a security guard at the homicide base. She's outside smoking and taking what seemed to be a pretty extended break. Yes, she says the person that she saw walking away from the lot was Caucasian, light-skinned, man wearing all black. First of all, in no way am I going to try to tell you that the man she saw was the defendant. Clearly, it was not the defendant. Who will I tell you it was? I submit to you that it was Tariq Maqbool that she saw. That's who she saw coming from the lot. She saw Tariq Maqbool. Why did she see him? She told you it's a desolate area. You don't see many cars down there, and there's not even any streetlights. Well, how is she able to see him? Because, as she said, Tariq Maqbool crossed the street from the Laidlaw Bus Company. In fact, she was right in front of him. That's why she's able to see him and not able to see the defendant. Tariq Maqbool didn't walk along the street on the other side where it was unlit. She said that Maqbool crossed the street and was right in front, so she had to see him. That is his closing argument in another man's trial on this case. Literally stating, she said that Maqbool crossed the street. She was right in front of him, so she had to see him. If the prosecuting attorney was so confident that his witness had seen Tariq Maqbool that evening, why not call her to the stand during Tariq Maqbool's trial so she can point him out and say, yes, that is the man I saw. However, in his closing arguments, the same prosecuting attorney says this about that same very witness. I would like to talk a bit about the opportunity to make observations, because the people that testified before you testified as to the things they observed, not what people told them. Things they saw, things they did. Now, obviously, the better opportunity they had to make these observations, the more trustworthy the observations are. And not to single her out, but folks, if you listen to the testimony of Angela Williams, the security guard, I submit to you that her testimony is almost entirely useless. Why? Not really because she was lying to you, just because she did not have the opportunity to make these observations that she was testifying to. She admitted that it was pitch black down there. There's no lights. She thinks she sees somebody who's tall and thin come out. It is very clear that Angela Williams did not have much of an opportunity to make any observations that were going to help you with this case other than the fact that she saw 2 vehicles. She wasn't able to identify anyone. She's the sleepy security guard. She wasn't able to identify anyone. She's the sleepy security guard. Now, for those who may have missed what he said in another trial, I submit to you that it was Tariq Maqbool that she saw. That's who she saw coming from the lot. She saw Tariq Maqbool. In fact, she was right in front of him. That's why she's able to see him. She said that Maqbool crossed the street and was right in front, so she had to see him.
This is, to me, when I heard that, I knew they will do anything just to get me guilty. It did not matter the truth.
So, with all the information that the jury had and all the evidence that was presented, they head out for deliberation. And Tariq says it isn't long before they come back with an odd question.
You remember I was charged in my indictment for Jay and Andy's kidnapping, so they were the victim. That's how the whole case stands. So when the jury heard the whole evidence, they went in. One of the first questions they sent out was, did Jay receive a deal from the prosecution? I was sitting there, I was doing, cartwheels in my head. I was like, why would a victim get a deal? So they must be thinking he is a part of this crime, because of all the characters and all that. And that question did not make any sense. It's like a woman goes in and say, yeah, I was robbed by this person, and then they come back and say, was she part of this? Did she get a deal? A victim is never spoken of in that sense, that terms by the jury, but they did. And the judge said, I'm not going to answer that question because it was never covered in the trial. So I was going crazy. I said, why don't you answer that question? Because they are obviously questioning his credibility. The entire case is on credibility. He's like, I'm not going to answer it because you guys never asked that question. So I said, in the name of God, please tell me, why would we ask that question when I'm charged with his kidnapping? Who asked a so-called victim, are you a victim, sir? Like, no, you don't ask that question. You just go on his story and, attack his point that allegations he's trying to make against me. But that didn't happen, so the jury did not hear that.
So the question of whether Jay got any particular deal or assistance for his testimony did come into question as early as the initial Miranda hearing before the trial commenced. Tariq's attorney brought up the fact that Jawad Mia was in fact in America illegally. Not only did he lie on his visa application, but he was also denied for permanent residency in 2004. However, at the Miranda hearing, Tariq's attorney points out that not long after he's refused his permanent residency, he suddenly receives a social security number and green card. In the Miranda hearing prior to the trial, Tariq's attorney petitions the court to have the prosecution provide her with a copy of Jawad's visa documents, as well as a copy of his application to the INS for his green card. Or, and I quote, whatever document allowed him to stay in this country. She says, this gentleman has testified in previous trials, as Your Honor knows, and as a result of that testimony, it is clear that he was in this country at the time of this offence illegally. And now, suddenly, Your Honor, he has a social security number, and I would like to know how that came about. Tariq's attorney wanted to know if the prosecutor's office or anyone from the office had in any way, shape or form helped Jawad obtain his green card. The prosecutor says, and I quote, as far as the state is concerned, as far as I know, there has been no helping or assistance with Mr. Mir in any immigration process. The judge then directs the prosecutor to actively investigate and ensure this is the situation, which he says he will. When Jay took the stand in the actual trial, Tariq's attorney would begin questioning him on his visa situation. There was a big hoo-ha in the court as the prosecuting attorney objected to her line of questioning, stating his visa had nothing to do with the case. However, the judge would allow Tariq's attorney to continue in the line of questioning, but only if the questions remained relevant to information Jay had provided to homicide detectives. Because he had in fact lied to officers and told them he was a permanent resident of the US, when in fact he was not. So did Jay get a deal for his testimony? Well, according to the prosecutor, he did not.
How long did the jury take to deliberate on the case?
2.5 days or 3 days, something like that. I forgot exactly. I think there's a weekend in the middle. If you count that, I don't think that's counted, but 3 days or 4 days, something like that.
Obviously that wait must just be absolutely intense, sitting around waiting to just get that notification that the jury's returned with a verdict.
Yeah, it was. It's just I had a feeling in the pit of my stomach, and I was ready for it. So, but one way or the other, I had to. I'm not gonna lose my cool. I think I was mentally prepared for it. My heart was set. Yeah. So when it came, I kind of knew. So.
Were you there for the verdict from the jury?
Yes, I was. I was there for the verdict. I was there for the first phase and the second phase, the sentencing. Yeah.
Did the family have any hope that he would be found not guilty, or was, what was the feeling amongst the family when we're waiting for that result?
The family was hopeful, and because we believe in Allah, we believe that he would have justice because he is innocent. And, that this is something that will be obvious. We really believed it would be obvious to the jury. we believed that he would have justice. Yeah, it was, we did think that he was going to be free.
Were you there for the verdict?
I was not.
No.
I was actually covering I know exactly where I was. I was covering a conference in Philadelphia, and I was coming back on the train. I was running up the escalator to catch my train back to New Jersey when his brother called me.
That must have been an awful phone call to receive.
I stopped. Like I almost tripped on the escalator because I stopped, and I was like, say that again? What happened? And he said they convicted him.
They found you guilty on all charges?
Every charge, exception of the kidnapping of Jay and Andy.
Right, so they didn't believe that you were guilty of kidnapping those two, but they found you guilty on everything else.
No, but I think that's why they asked that question, and that's why the jury flipped it on in the death penalty part. So I think the jury thought that they probably did it, and I was their co-defendant, and they were just turning state on me or something or whatever. I believe they thought that we were all involved in this matter. That's why I wanted to testify that I was not involved in that bullcrap. I was involved in a legitimate deal, and whatever the prosecution had presented to them, and specifically said that there was no deal, there were never any intentions of bringing any legitimate, business deal. I was trying to set up from the con from day one, which was fundamentally not true. It's a lie. It is a pure, simple lie, but I can't prove it because no witnesses are allowed to come in. I mean, no witnesses were brought in. I had to sit there I can't tell you, I wanted to scream. I was screaming inside, but I just couldn't. I had to take it all. That's it. And then the verdict came.
It was surreal, the moment. Like all your hopes and dreams, or just everything that you were really holding on to, just fall apart.
In hindsight, I can tell you, me at this age, I would convince him to take the deal because he would be out in another few years.
No one wants to admit to killing people if you didn't kill someone. You're like, no, I did not do that. I'm not going to stand up here and say, yes, I'm going to do that and take a 30-year prison sentence. Most normal people will go, I'm going to go to court and there's no evidence that shows I did this. So I will win because...
And that's the problem with the American criminal justice system, that when I was going through this in my 20s, I read a report from New York Times that 95% of inmates who are incarcerated, they have taken the deal. This is how it works. Like they'll pull you over for smoking weed and they'll scare you with 10 years of your life, or you take 2 years or 5 years, and they'll take the deal because they already know how the system works. It's just, we were new. We had never been involved in anything like this. I guess ignorance is bliss. And we were like, yeah, I guess you have faith in the criminal justice system, and they would have to prove their case. And, we also went along with what the attorney was saying, that they have to prove the case.
I remember when the verdict was read, I was just quiet. I took it in. I just made a prayer, like, God, it is a journey. Just prepare me for whatever I have to go through, and that's it. I was told they handcuffed me again. I was already handcuffed before, but when the jury comes to take handcuffs off, so they make a point in front of the jury to put handcuffs in front of them. I turned around, I saw the prosecution laughing. I understand he had to do a job, so I just congratulated him and I left.
And I remember going, how? Why? And his brother was like, how the hell do I know? I don't know. And it was such a dumb question, but it made no sense. Like, none of this makes sense to me. Like, the trial itself, it made no sense. I'm going to keep saying that till I'm blue in the face, but that's how I felt then. That's how I feel now. And people are very quick to say, hey, they wouldn't have convicted him if he didn't do it. That seems to be like this thing. People have this innate faith in the justice system here. But until you actually know the justice system and are involved in it and see it, you don't see just how unfair it is and how they punish you for trying to stand up for yourself and say, I didn't do that, because that's what happened to him.
the sheriff took me and then took my cuffs off, and he grabbed my shoulder. He did something crazy. He said that was the most honorable thing I ever seen. I said, what? He said, you congratulated the prosecutor. I said, hey, man, what am I supposed to, I'm raised a certain way. I'm not going to, I'm sure, it is to get a job, and what am I supposed to say? That's it. And he just shook his head and just locked me in the cage, and that's it.
You have 1 minute remaining.
But it wasn't over, because there was still the decision of whether or not Tariq Maqbool would be sentenced to death. And it would be during the verdict for this result that they suddenly realised the jury may have been utterly confused as to how they come to a verdict.
So he said, what was the vote count on this? He said 8-4. So I'm like, yo, he's going with plurality. And I was like, yo, they're confused.
And while sitting in prison pod HQ one very early morning, my phone rang. Hello, Jack speaking.
Yeah, somebody just called.
Yeah, is this Jawad Mir?
This is?
Next time, in the final episode of the story of Tariq Maqbool. 1 Minute Remaining is a Mashed Pumpkin production, created, hosted and produced by Jack Lawrence, with thanks to special guest producer Alyssa Cook. Audio and sound design by Jack Lawrence and Dom Evans of Earsay.